Welcome to another episode of A Stranger, a Suitcase and a Story. I'm Anton van der Walt, and with me is my co-host and fellow traveler on this journey, Ben. Ben Liebenberg. Hello, Ben. How are you doing?
Anton, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And thanks for joining. This is a podcast where we explore what it means to leave behind the life you knew and step into the unknown. We dive deep into stories of migration, identity and belonging, unpacking not just the suitcases, but the hopes, fears and dreams people carry with them. Whether you've made the leap yourself, thinking about starting over, or are just simply curious about the courage it takes to begin again, you're in the right place. Each conversation is a window into the human spirit, what it longs for, what it lets go of, and what it finds on the other side of change. Today we're joined by Nicol and Mareli, and they are a couple that is going to share the story, what it brings, their insights, their heart and their perspective in their shared journey with us. So welcome, Nicol and Mareli. Really pleased to have you here.
Thank you very much. Happy to be a part of your podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben and I had a quick chat before we started, and we're so stoked to have you guys on the podcast. What we're trying to do is to make sure that we have a very diverse group of people that we speak to. For us to have a couple and also a very young and energetic couple is fantastic for us to talk to, because you bring a very fresh perspective to the discussion. But as Nick said, Nicholas is a quantity surveyor by trade, and Mareli is a solicitor. And as Nicol says, when he's not managing numbers, you'll probably find all of you outdoors, a love for travel, surfing and hiking. But they're both from the Western Cape originally, and so that's about what I want to say about introducing them. Really stoked to have you guys here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we normally start our chat, or I normally do, and I'm interested to find out about you guys, where you were born, how you grew up, you know, if you want to chat about it, your family situation, where you're from, your brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, all that kind of thing, and the place in South Africa. So if you don't mind, take us a little bit back in time and start from when you grew up and how you grew up and where you grew up, and a little bit about yourself that we get to know you.
Yeah, I'll go first. So I'm from Stellenbosch, the beautiful wine region, very close to Cape Town. I have three sisters. Two, sorry. We're three kids, two sisters. One lives in Melbourne, immigrated 3 years ago, and my other sister still lives in Cape Town. Both my parents are also in Cape Town, and I love growing up in Stellenbosch. Was incredible. We went back to Stellenbosch in December, and it's still just as beautiful as I remember it. Beautiful place to live, amazing mountains, great wine region. I went to Paul Roos, and the school was still just incredible. And just walking the streets, December was happy memories, and so happy that things were still amazing.
And I'm from a small town called Riversdale on the Garden Route. That's where I grew up. After that, I moved to Stellenbosch to study, which is where I met Nicol. And then we lived in Cape Town before we moved to Sydney. I am the eldest of three daughters. I've got two younger sisters who both live in South Africa, and my parents still live in Riversdale as well. Yeah, that's how I grew up.
Yeah, but no doubt if we start having a chat that we'll find a lot of common ground between us, because I grew up in Paarl, just around the corner. And I've got some really good mates down in Riversdale. We'll have a lot of people and places that we know in common. It's a good part of the world, nice part of the world where you come from.
And then you both studied at Stellenbosch, and then from what I understand, you guys really love traveling. And so is this the reason why you guys have come across to Australia? Is this something that you planned, or you talk about, Nick, if I can challenge you on that, you talk about beautiful place where you come from is just so fantastic. And so we're curious about your journey here and why you decide to come to Australia.
I might take this one.
Yep.
So we I think we both agree that we had a fantastic life in South Africa. We were very happy there. We had good jobs. We lived on Beach Road in Woolly Point in Cape Town with a view out to the ocean. Yeah, we had a really, really good lifestyle in South Africa and in Cape Town in particular. But I think we have both always been very, very adventurous. Even when we were students, we spent 3 months in Aspen, Colorado in the USA on a kind of like a working holiday visa, working on the ski slopes, making some money and then traveling through the US. That was before we were married. As a student, I spent about 6 months in Germany on exchange. So we've always loved traveling, and I think we always told ourselves, even before we got married, that one day we'd want to experience living abroad and going and working somewhere else. But then we both got really good jobs and we became very, I think, comfortable in South Africa, living great lives. And a few opportunities came across, my desk as a lawyer and working in a very kind of like niche area, which is M&A and private equity. I was approached by a few different recruiters with opportunities to go work in London or even New York. Always turned them down on the basis that we just loved living in South Africa. And then one day, can't say for any good reason, I said to Nicol, why not? Why are we turning down all these opportunities? Why don't we pursue it? Like, let's go and explore. Let's go try something new. Even if it's just for 2 years, if we don't like it, we can always come back. And I think that's what sparked the conversation in the beginning was, let's see it as an adventure. So we started weighing up our different options. I think we were looking at anywhere between Amsterdam, London, Vancouver, Melbourne, Sydney, Auckland. We literally drew up a pros and cons list. I remember one evening in our apartment weighing up all the different pros and cons for different cities and decided that Sydney ticked most of our boxes in terms of lifestyle. As Nicol makes no secret of the fact that he's a very keen surfer. We both love the outdoors. So yeah, Sydney ticked all the boxes for us, and that's really what prompted us to move here. I think originally our plan was never to immigrate. Our families were so surprised when we told them we're moving to Sydney because it came so out of the blue. It wasn't something that we had contemplated long and hard and had difficult discussions with them, because we originally just thought we'll come over, see how it is, stay for 2 years, and then we can go back. But then we loved it so much, so we just decided to stay.
I think there's a piece of the puzzle that I'll just fill in, because it all started with also taking a 6-month break to go traveling. We got at a point in our careers, also Mareli a bit earlier than I did. So I was actually a little bit apprehensive in the beginning to go traveling for 6 months, quit our jobs. And then the conversation started with, let's take a break, let's travel for 6 months, and then what comes after.
Yeah.
And then that kind of led into, okay, but what comes after? Do we come back to South Africa, or do we go and explore a new country, a new city? So that's how it happened.
Yeah, I think the two happened at around the same time.
Right.
At the same time that we were thinking about making a move abroad, I heard over the radio what I thought was an inspiring story about someone who was traveling on one of these around the world tickets and visiting all these amazing places. And it was after, as a young lawyer, I was working incredibly long hours and I was a bit burnt out, to be honest. And I thought, okay, I need to just take a break. I need to go travel. I need to do something for me, something that lights up my fire again. So as Nicol said, we took 6 months off work to go just travel through South America, and then saw that as a good break from South Africa to then make the move over to Australia at the same time.
So what did you do in I've got so many questions, but I don't want this one to get skipped, Ben, and that is, what did you do in South America? I mean, it's got nothing to do with Australia, but I'd love to know, what did you do for 6 months there?
You go. She's the travel planner, so half the time I don't actually know where we're going, and I just tag along and just see all these incredible things. So I'll hand it over to Maddie.
Yeah.
So we essentially, I mean, we sold our car and we sold everything that we had in South Africa, scraped together whatever money we had to fund this, what I thought at the time was like a once in a lifetime trip, and it was quite life changing. But we backpacked. It wasn't a lavish holiday. We literally packed everything that we needed for 6 months in 2 packs on our backs, and we backpacked and stayed, kind of like basic accommodation. Because we were a couple, we didn't stay, and we were about 29, 30 years old at the time. And we had a bit of money saved up, so it wasn't, I don't want to paint a picture of us like staying in dorm rooms, having to share, with 10 other people. It wasn't that scruffy, but it wasn't fancy either. We stayed in kind of like small Airbnbs or guest houses, or sometimes in backpackers, but at least with a private room. So it was quite basic, but we ventured all through Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, Colombia, Panama.
So it was like a backpacker's holiday. It wasn't a working holiday, right?
No, we just traveled, and we went from seeing the Iguazu waterfalls on the border of Brazil and Argentina to hiking to Machu Picchu and
Patagonia.
Down to Patagonia in the south, up to the Caribbean. We sailed for 7 days from Panama to Colombia, trekked through, jungles to lost cities. Yeah, amazing hiking, scuba diving.
So did you guys go around? Did you start in Brazil and then go around and finish up in Brazil, or how did you go?
It was a bit of a zigzag, but we started it. There were a few key places that we knew we wanted to visit even before we set off on the trip. So Machu Picchu was one where we had to book our spots on the Inca Trail months in advance.
Okay.
And then the same for the W Trek down in Patagonia. We also needed to book that a long time in advance. So that set specific points in our itinerary that we needed to meet. But the rest was fairly free flow. But yes, we started in Brazil and then hopped across to Peru. And from Peru, traveled to Bolivia, down to Chile and Argentina, and then back up to Ecuador, Colombia, Panama, and Costa Rica.
And how did you go? Did you drive most of the time, fly, or how did you go around? I mean, so it's a big continent.
Combination.
We sailed, we flew.
Okay.
Yeah, but all public transport and flights where we needed to.
And how did you go with the language?
It's mostly Spanish speaking.
Yeah.
We did try and learn a little bit of Spanish before we left, and we can get by.
Oh, that's
with a
all
little
right.
bit of Spanish. Yeah.
It's a challenge, going over to South America. Just listening to you guys just makes me itch to travel again. But a challenge can be the language, especially in those countries, because you assume most people might speak English, and then you get there and you find that, it's not really true. There's a lot of them that just don't speak English.
But there's so many great tools these days with Google. You can even sit in a restaurant. I remember anytime we didn't understand anything on a menu, you could literally just take your phone with Google over the image, like over the words, and it will translate it to English. Wow. So there's so many good tools these days that make it a lot easier.
And hand gestures. Within context, hand gestures, it gets you.
Imagine.
And the only phrase you really need to know is dos cervezas por favor, which is 2 beers, please.
Absolutely. I've done that same trip, but in Europe when I was younger. I went to play rugby there for 2 years, and it was pretty much the same thing, I thought in France they'll be right with English, but nothing, and there were no Google, no phones, none of the things you have today, and it was pretty much hand gestures, that was it. But that's part of the fun. It's a part of working things out, and the miscommunication sometimes very good.
Yeah. It's a fascinating part in your life, and you look back at it, and hopefully you've got a lot of, other than memories, you have a lot of photos and stuff like that you can refer back. But I suppose that trip probably set you up to say, well, we want more of that. And so After that 6 months, where did you go there after that? What was your next step?
Well, we went back to South Africa for a month. We had a wedding of one of my best friends and Marley's sister. And then we essentially wrapped everything up and then moved to Sydney. So when we took that flight to Sydney, we've never been to Australia. So it was all brand new, very exciting. So that's, yeah, we took the plunge.
But in terms of traveling, I think when we first arrived, we were because we had just spent all our money backpacking through South America. We were fortunate that I had secured my job in Sydney even before we left South Africa. So we knew we had already secured a good income on this side, and they were fantastic because they paid for our visas, they paid for our flights, they paid for our relocation. They made it very easy for us to come over with essentially nothing. They even put us up in accommodation for the first 2 weeks. They paid the bond for our apartment. We had it very, very easy coming over. And then once we got here, we first needed to obviously just make a little bit more money so we could just set up house again and settle in. But then we were very quick to get to Bali, explore some of Australia. But then unfortunately COVID hit, which halted a lot of our travel plans. I think we had planned trips to Alaska that was cancelled. Portugal, Spain, Morocco was cancelled, and Fiji was cancelled, all during COVID. But then as soon as borders opened up again, our first trip after COVID was over was back home to South Africa to see our families. But then after that,
we did another 4-month trip.
Oh, yes.
We did. We took 4 months off and traveled Central America. So essentially where we left off, we stopped in Costa Rica, we flew back to Costa Rica, and then went to every country in Central America and Mexico and Cuba.
Yeah.
That's about 2 years ago. Time flies.
We can run you through the list of places we've been, but it's a long list.
Fantastic, man. So that's interesting. So you had yourself set up a little bit before you got here, and you kind of you didn't quite know what you were in for. Did you have any preconceived ideas of what Australia would be like, or were you just open to whatever you got here? What did you think of it before you came?
We've never been to Australia, and I don't think we did any research. So
a little bit.
Well, yeah, a little bit, but not much. Pretty much what I knew about Australia was, the South African or essentially my friends and family's perspective of Australia.
Yeah.
And that's all I had to go off. It's very similar to South Africa. The weather is similar. People like to be outdoors, etc.
Sports crazy nation.
Yeah, sports crazy nation. That's all I knew. But it's very different from what I thought.
Tell us, we'd love to know.
Firstly, I would say that the culture is very different from South African culture. The people are very different. I wouldn't say that South Africans have a similar culture to Australians. Australia has big pub culture, which we don't really have in South Africa. Where we live on the northern beaches of Manly, it's an incredible beach culture. We have beaches in South Africa and people like going to the beach, but Australia is just next level in terms of beach culture. Every morning, our beaches are on northern beaches, just full surfing, surf clubs, volleyball clubs, very active, very outdoorsy, similar to South Africans, but I feel it's a lot more. I guess it's because it's a lot safer and I think it's just more accessible, potentially. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the braai culture is obviously very different. There's no braai culture in Australia. South Africans love to go gay at someone's house, where in Australia that's very different. You hardly ever go to someone's house. You meet up at the pub or at a park or on the beach. I wouldn't say it's the same at all.
For me, I thought that Australians would be, and they are, but I thought that generally even the business culture would be a little bit more laid back. I think people have this perception that Australians are all just easygoing, laid back, anything goes. Well, that's at least what I thought. I thought that coming over and working as a lawyer or as a solicitor here would be much more chilled than in South Africa for some reason. And I found the opposite. Like, if you work in a corporate job in Australia or in Sydney in particular, I think people work actually really hard. But what surprised me in a good way is that I think there's a lot more flexibility here. I think that in South Africa, if you're going for kind of like a top job, there's a very rigid way of what you need to do and how hard you need to work and how you need to look and behave to do that job. Whereas I think in Australia, there's a little bit more flexibility and people do strive perhaps, or you can work as hard as you want to do the job that you want, or you actually have a choice to say, I actually want to have a bit more flexibility, or I want to prioritize a work-life balance a bit more. And that's not as frowned upon here, I think, than it is in South Africa. I don't know if that makes sense, but
It does make 100% sense. I mean, I've been here for a long time now, and I can 100% say the same thing, and there's much more of acceptance that not everybody wants to climb the corporate ladder. They just want to do their thing, and that's okay, you just do what you have to do. But yeah, all the things you said, I can 100% say, I came 25 plus years ago and it was the same, it's still the same now, those things hasn't changed.
Another thing that surprised me was, as South Africans, we love our rugby, and I've realized in Australia that rugby is not well supported. Like, it's not a big sport in Australia, which I find very strange. And then also the gambling culture.
Yeah.
That was, to me, a culture shock. I just didn't know. It's not a thing, really. I don't know if it's changed in South Africa or all over the world, but certainly from my background coming here, I've never experienced the level of gambling culture. That was a culture shock.
Yeah, and I think, Mareli, to get to your other point, I'm just listening to you, I'm thinking, and I'm trying to draw a kind of parallel here about people in Australia that do a lot of work. And in order to get ahead, they actually have to work really hard. And I wonder also if it becomes obvious to you when you come here, because where we came from in South Africa, there's affordable help. There are certain things that you could get help with. And of course, it just depends on the sort of level of money and stuff that you have in South Africa. You don't have to do a lot other than going to work and earn money. But in Australia, it's very different. In Australia, you basically have to do everything yourself. Unless you're affluent, which in Australia, that's not a big thing. In Australia, it's more about, as you say, there's a much more a level playing field here. The size of the house and the type of car really doesn't matter. People have to do a lot of the stuff themselves. And so it's not unusual that they then work in the way that they do. It's an interesting parallel. I don't know what you think about my thought there.
I agree. And I mean, that's something that we've had to get used to as well, because I think we were very privileged back in South Africa with a lot of help. We never, working the hours that I did, working for a big corporate law firm in Cape Town, I never cooked, I never cleaned, I never washed my own laundry or folded my own clothes. I never had to do any of that. I had people who helped me to do all those things so that I could just focus on my job.
Yep.
I think it's a double-edged sword in a way, because yes, no one likes to do those household chores, but at the same time, because everyone in Australia has to do those chores themselves because you cannot afford to have help, I think there's also, it gives you a little bit of reprieve from your work as well, because I don't know, it's like in South Africa, I feel like I was just focused on my corporate job. And because I had someone else to help me with all these other things, that's all I needed to do. Whereas here, I'm forced to be more mindful about how I use my time. I cannot just spend all my time just working, because otherwise my laundry is just going to pile up. Otherwise, we're not going to have anything to eat. I mean, Nicol is fantastic, and we share household chores very equally, I would say.
Yes.
He actually does all the cooking, but yeah, but I like that actually, and I think we, for very personal reasons, we don't have kids, but I certainly struggled when we were in South Africa with the idea of having kids, because I looked around at all the other professional women who were working alongside me, and I thought they never see their children because they outsource. Yes, it's fantastic to have all that help. At the same time, they were literally at the office till 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, by the time they got home, someone else had already bathed and fed their children and put them to bed. So they only really saw their kids on the weekends. And I thought that was, I don't know if I want to have children if I'm not going to be able to spend meaningful time with them. If I can't actually be a parent to them, I don't know if that's how I would want to raise kids. And so for as long as we lived in South Africa, we always said we actually did not want to have children. When we moved to Australia, like I know a lot of people here complain about not having that help and not having those luxuries of having someone cook and clean and do all the chores like you were used to in South Africa. But here, I feel like the Australian parents are so much more involved in their kids' lives, which I think is a good thing.
It's a great observation you're making, and to take it a step further, that's the reason why I'm asking this, because you see this beyond just the chores. It's that involvement that you could have. Some parents choose not to have it even in Australia, right? But then there's another level which also that I'm experiencing because I'm a bit older now and I've got a son here, and that's the reason why we came across, because he came to study here. And so we said, well, we're not going to live our lives without seeing him. It's the only kid we got. And so we came across. And, Leanne and I are doing our own work here and doing our thing and running our businesses. And Anton is working. He's now got a wife and they've got a baby. And so we've now got a grandchild. And because of the whole issue about you get so involved because you have to, it's a magic thing, because you now purposefully going to support your children with the kids. I mean, they're all just on their training wheels right now, right? It's a 3-month-old baby. And that's the wonderful thing about Australia that you often don't think about before you come.
Yeah, because we see, and I guess to flow on from what I said earlier, it was only after we moved to Australia and seeing the families in the surf in the mornings before school. And seeing how much, yes, no doubt there's obviously a lot of hard work involved, and I'm by no means saying it's all easy going, but I feel like because parents in Australia are so much more involved in their kids' lives, there's also so much more joy, and you see families just having a really, really good time, like playing in the park or being on the beach or going for outings here. And I think that's an unexpected positive.
Yeah, that's good. That's a very, very interesting observation. So what were the things that you found, I suppose, the more difficult stuff you adapted to? Where was that? Was it private, making friends, fitting in? Was it work-related? What were the more challenging things for you guys when you came over?
I think if we speak about making friends, I think we thought it would be easier to connect with the Aussies. Like when we originally came, we're like, we're not gonna just try and connect with all the South Africans. We're gonna meet all the Australians and we're gonna integrate. And I think that wasn't easy, and it's still not easy. We've been here for 6.5 years, and it's if we look at our friend group, it's mostly expats, South Americans, South Africans. But some people that has a similar story to us, or people that that don't have their clicks, and I think that's natural. I think that's just that it is what it is. So we find it easier to connect, with like-minded people and people with the same experiences. So I think we're constantly trying more to integrate, but it's difficult to build on those deep relationships. Generally, I find Australians to be super friendly, and I'm always in the surf and there's always a good chat, and it's to find those deep, meaningful relationships when you come over at a later stage in your life. It's also more difficult. If I think about my friends, it's my deep connections are generally people that I went to primary school with and high school or university. So I think that's a natural challenge. Work-wise, I find it relatively easy. I'm a quant surveyor, and I think similar to what we do in South Africa, but also different, but not in too much of a real challenge. I would say it's more the soft skills that you need to learn, where South Africans are very direct, the way we speak, and a lot of the time, like our tone, we don't realize it, but we are direct. And like you pick up or you learn that things
You
like you
realise
must
it when
do
you're
this
here.
or whatever. Like it's the Aussies would be like, whoa. And then you learn the soft skills, and it's important to learn it. I think you'd have a hard time in Australia if you don't learn it, and the sooner the better. Yeah, I would say that's challenges.
That's an excellent observation. I think that's universal. You speak to Australians, and that's the one comment that they have about South Africans, and they say that many of them are very direct, and some of them come across then as arrogant as well, right? From that perspective. And so if you want to get ahead here, then you've got to learn, and you say that, and that's very important. And I think that you've got to learn that there's a different way of asking for something. There's a different speak about it, right? There's words like perhaps you could do that, or maybe you should think about it like that way, or not like South Africans would say, well, you need to go and do this now, right?
Listen to me. Listen to me. Let me tell you.
Let me tell you.
I thought it was so strange when the first time someone asked me, did you want to do this? Like, did you want to give X person a call?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, no, I don't want to.
Yeah.
But if you tell me, call this person, then I will call that person. But if you
Yeah.
ask me, did you want to give this person a call? I'm like, no, I don't want to.
It absolutely drove my wife crazy, especially because our children were born here in Australia. And we were just basically on our own because we had no family here. And all she wanted was just somebody to tell her, like a South African, just give her direction and say, do this, do that, don't do that. And everybody was just suggesting stuff and, talking politely. And she said, can somebody just tell me what to do and not suggest a few things I want to know what I need to do. So, yeah.
So the thing that I'm quite interested in is you've got, I think, your sister here, Mareli, and your sister. Yeah, Nicole, your sister. So our podcast has got a middle name. It's called The Suitcase, right? And so, we're interested. I mean, you're such travelers, so, I mean, you probably came with a very light suitcase anyway, because you didn't need much. But what were the emotional things that you've left behind and that you sit and think about sometimes? And, you might have friends that are sitting there that either want to come across or say to you, why are you here? I mean, we're living in a wonderful place. You're wasting your time over there and that sort of thing. What is in your emotional suitcase?
For me, we speak about it a lot. We miss the Bosveld, like the bush. We used to go every year, and it's just such a special place for us. So we miss that. We miss our friends, obviously, and our culture. It's something that you don't, even being with South Africans in Australia, it's very different from being with South Africans in South Africa. It's not, you can't replicate South Africa in Australia. Well, everyone's got their own opinion, but my opinion is that you can't replicate it. So I miss friends and family. I miss the bush, and I miss those, those late nights around a braai and talk. Yeah, I don't have that here.
For me as well, it's the deep, meaningful conversations. I've struggled to find those kind of similar connections here. So I do think I miss just having those good, deep chats with friends who get your sense of humor and who understand where you're coming from. Because I think sometimes, well, one, there's not enough time to build those new relationships here, perhaps. And on the other hand, the types of conversations you have here, I feel, are a bit more superficial than they used to be. Like, I think we both like to philosophize about things, and now we only have each other to do that with.
Well, that's not so bad, right? So what do you do to fill... it's an interesting thing because, you're talking, we 4 people on the call, we've all grown up in South Africa. That was where we were. So for sure, those are the things that you would miss. But what do you do to fill that void? If it gets too much, then that's also not a good thing. So maybe ask the question maybe a little bit differently. What do you do at home that makes you feel like it's not so bad? I don't miss it so much.
I think For me personally, it's embracing what Australia has to offer. It's not trying to replicate South Africa in Australia because it just doesn't work. But Australia has so much to offer, just from where it is in the world. It gives you access to a lot of places that's easy to travel that for South Africans would be super far or just very expensive. So it opens up a world for travel. So we travel a lot just around Australia, but also Fiji and Bali and Asia is
Heading to
close.
French Polynesia in 2 months.
Yeah. So definitely seeing this part of the world, surfing. I surf a lot, try to surf 4 times a week, sometimes every day if there's well. So it's fitting or tapping into the incredible beach culture that the northern beaches of Sydney has to offer. So that's an easy one. And then, I've got good mates and good friends that surf with me. A lot of them are South African. So it's, and hiking and diving.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think it's not, and we've had this discussion with other South Africans who are sometimes quite unhappy when they just move across and it's not exactly what they expected or they feel underwhelmed by the Australian experience. And I think what we found is that oftentimes it's because they're trying to recreate the life that they had in South Africa here. And I think then you're always going to be disappointed because you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole by trying to make Australia look and feel like South Africa did, or just the good parts of South Africa, because it's obviously not all good. But I think if you can change your perspective and say, well, I moved away from South Africa for whatever those reasons might be to make a new life for myself in Australia. Australia is not the same as South Africa. It's never going to be the same as South Africa. It's going to be very different. I'm not going to have the big house and fancy car and all the help, but I'm going to have a lot of freedom. I'm going to be safe. I'm going to have access to amazing infrastructure and amazing social spaces, beaches, parks that are clean, that are safe. I can go walking without having to look over my shoulder. I can take advantage of all the amazing natural beautiful places around here. My kids are safe. I don't know. I think if you start embracing what Australia has to offer as opposed to trying to recreate South Africa here, I think you'll be much happier. And I think that's what we've done. So in South Africa, we would have spent every weekend flying with our friends. Like that's what we would do on the weekends. We would get together with our friends, we would get together with our family, and we would be braaiing and watching the rugby. If we were trying to do that every weekend here, we would be bitterly disappointed. So instead now, we don't do that. We go to the beach, we go hiking, we go scuba diving, we go traveling, we take advantage of everything that Australia has to offer instead. And we're much happier for it.
Fantastic. Look, part of the reason why Anton and I actually started this pod, we were actually having a dinner one night and we were just chatting, and part of it is to actually do what you exactly did, just to share our stories, because that's how you learn. And we said, I wish somebody just told me that when I started, and not to have the same expectations, to be open-minded, not to compare. It just makes it easy. So, I think what you just said is the reason why we actually wanted to do this pod. I mean, we don't do this for any other gain or anything getting out of it. We just thought it would have been nice if some of the stuff we've learned, somebody told us before we came, or you don't always listen and learn, but at least you're a bit more open-minded. And it's such very good advice that you gave there. It's like, doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are coming over, that principle is exactly the same. Just to move on, I wanted to ask one other thing for you guys. We always talk about that suitcase that you pack and stuff that you leave behind that you cannot get. So when you guys come over, did you have, how did your families feel about it? Were they excited for you? Were they a bit of reluctance? Or how did you experience that?
I think they almost, I don't know if they believed us until we actually said, because we had the 6-month travel and then we got back to South Africa for that month. And then I remember we were in Ballito with my parents and Mareli was like, so I was like buying plane tickets to Australia. And even then she was like, are you really going? So,
They were really like, I don't know if they, like you say, they were in shock because we were always dreaming and talking about all the places we'd go and all the things we would do. And I think they didn't quite believe us until we were halfway out the door.
But they're very supportive. Both our families were very supportive, I would say. You could always, like, if it doesn't work out, you can always go back to South Africa. You know, what's the real risk?
Absolutely.
I think it was easier for them as well because it wasn't this big immigration. We've spoken to many people who immigrate from South Africa. We never immigrated. I know we did, but we never saw it in that way. We just moved across to Australia for what was going to be 2 years that turned into 6 and counting. If we wanted to move back tomorrow, we would do that. But we enjoy living here, so we'll stay, at least for now, because it was so almost casual. It wasn't this big announcement, we're leaving everyone behind and we're moving to Australia. I feel like it was easier for them to digest. And then with COVID, of course, everyone experienced the same challenge of not being able to go home. But then once we actually went home to visit everyone after COVID, I think that just strengthened our decision that this was where we wanted to be. So it was a very organic move. It wasn't this big announcement. It was it kind of like just gradually happened that we said, we like it, we'll stay.
And because we were so happy, I think my parents were also very supportive of my sister, which then came 2 years later with all the kids, which makes, and that's a new level. Because, you know, with grandparents, the kids become less important. It's all about the grandkids. So I think they were probably more that the grandkids moved to Australia. But they became very supportive just seeing our lifestyle here and how much we loved it. And now they spend between 6 months and 3 months a year in Australia. So, no, they love it. Or they love the fact that their kids are here now.
No, and it's... you know, I can only echo what Ben has said. I mean, one of the questions that we always ask is, you know, what advice do you have? And Mareli, I didn't have to ask you that. You were very clear about that. And that's the message that is so, you know, and people don't realize how important it is, but it's as simple as you need to learn to speak a certain way here. And also, if you are here, you must remember you're here, you're not there. And so if you are here, then act and behave that way and embrace what is here. Because once you do that, your glass is half full. There's many things that you can feel unhappy about if you want to. But look at this and say, you are in a lucky country. This is an incredible privilege to stay in a country like this. And then the next thing is, being a South African, we generally work hard. And so what contribution can you make? And that's the reason, as Ben said, why we've done this podcast, because there's definitely somebody sitting out there that's going to listen to what you had to say, Mareli, and what you had to say, Nicol, that are also, you know, 30-odd years old and saying, you know, I've also got an adventurous spirit. And so, yes, it can be done and we can do this too. And this is the value of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And I think, like, always remembering that you have a choice. I know people move for different reasons, and I know everyone's circumstances are not the same. And some people, I guess, feel more compelled or more forced to leave than others. For us, it was always a choice. So I think that makes it easier as well, as if you see it as a choice, which is really a privilege. If you have the freedom to choose where you want to live. Now we have dual citizenship. Just having that choice of, well, we choose to live in Australia. We don't stay here because we have to stay here or because anyone's forcing us to stay here. If we don't like it, we can leave. So I think that also changes your perspective on things. Like, focus on the good things and focus on why you choose to be here, as opposed to, you should never feel so trapped in your decision if you're not happy. There's a saying, if you don't like where you are, move. You're not a tree.
Yeah. It's actually amazing how similar your story was to ours when we came over, because we did exactly the same. I mean, we didn't immigrate. We came for work opportunity and we just loved traveling. My wife did one of those around the world on her own things. She traveled around the world on her own, and I traveled a lot. So we were very similar, and I just found, speaking to a lot of people, that helped us a tremendous amount is that fact that we didn't put that pressure on ourselves, that we absolutely have to make this work. We always had this thing in our heads that if it doesn't work, it's 12 hours and we're back in South Africa. You know, it's not the end of the world. It just takes that pressure off. I know, and you're right. I mean, we're probably fortunate as well that we never felt that pressure and we had that choice. And probably not everybody has it, so it's easy to say that. But I do think if you have that mindset, it definitely make it easier for yourself.
And there's a lot of opportunities in Australia.
Yeah.
It's a country that's growing quickly. There's shortages in a lot of different trades and professions, etc. So there are a lot of opportunities, and I think that in Australia, we have the saying of fair go, and everyone should have a fair go. But it is true. I do think that if you want to make it work, you can. If you're willing to work hard, Anton mentioned it before, if you like South Africans, if you're that inclined, we have good work ethic and we take things serious and we take pride in our work. And if you are that inclined, then there will be opportunities for you. You just need to give it a crack.
So, yeah, we're getting to sort of the end of this, but I wanted to ask you about, you touched on this earlier, Nicol, about building a network, and that's not that easy. And so there's kind of two questions here: is how do you go about building your network? How do you and Mareli do that? And then secondly, I think you've also joined Southern Crossings, because that's where I met you. Why did you do that? And what did you find by joining them?
Well, I started my own business last year, October. So I was almost forced to network a lot because, you find new clients and new business. How I went about it is essentially LinkedIn and connecting with as many people that's got common interests or that, that's in my line of work. Connecting with them, going for lots of coffees, just trying to meet with anyone and everyone. And I found that it's hit and miss. But generally people, you just need to throw darts, and there will be someone that needs you or are willing to connect you with someone else. You just need to keep going. And then, if someone wants to have a coffee with you, then that's already a good start. Just building on that network and meeting as many people and
Putting yourself out
there. Putting yourself out there. People are generally very friendly. And people want to connect, I would say. It's always nice to meet someone new, have a bit of a chat and see if you can find common ground.
Right.
So, yeah, I would say just get out there and meet as many people as you possibly can.
Yeah, and it's hard work, but it's very rewarding. For us, it's put Ben and I on a different level in terms of our thinking. We wanted to do this podcast. We started it. We gave our stories. And so suddenly we're hearing more and more. And it's the most amazing thing. The conversation in closing with the two of you has been absolutely inspirational. And I don't say that just because it is, because you are young. But the thing that stands out for me and what I hear is that you've got your feet so flat on the ground. You really know what you want to go and do, and you go and follow those things, but you're very mindful about what works and what doesn't work. And, in Australia, there's a specific way to go about doing things, and you've discovered that. And you've been giving such good advice for other people that would care to listen to what you have to say. So thank you so much, Nicol and Mareli. It has been just an inspirational chat. Ben?
Yeah, no, very positive. That's what I take out of it, and that's so good to hear young people being positive and just embracing things and doing things, but as Anton said as well, just being mindful as well. So well done to you guys, and thanks for joining us. It's really a privilege to meet you, and I'm sure it's going to be beneficial to a lot of people.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Cheers.